This story was written by Michael Marks. It started with a text from my friend Alex. "She's alive in there." Alex had lost his fiancée Karen 6 months earlier in a car accident. He'd taken it about as hard as anyone could, and as much as anyone tried to help, he just seemed to keep sinking deeper into his depression. I had already started to worry about his mental state. It was obvious that he was heading towards a place where he was going to end up hurting himself or killing himself. I and others had already tried to get him help, but it was rare he would even speak to us or leave his house. When I got the text, it was nearly 1 a.m, and I was getting ready for bed. I hadn't actually heard from Alex in 3 weeks, so seeing his name pop up on my phone was surprising. The text simply said, "She's alive in there," followed by, "I need your help." The third text was an address. I punched it into my phone and saw the GPS give me directions towards the cemetery where Karen was buried. I felt an instant lump in my throat and a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't hard to put together what had happened. Alex had become unhinged. He thought Karen was alive, and he was going to dig her body up. I stared down at my phone and thought about calling 911, telling them what was about to happen. But ultimately, I decided to go get him myself. Alex was my friend, and he was right about one thing. He needed my help. When I arrived at the cemetery, the gates were locked, but the wall was scaled with little effort. I huffed and sighed as I dropped down on the other side and started looking for Karen's grave. It didn't take me long to spot a dim orange light off in the distance. I could even faintly hear the sounds of someone digging. I was too late. He'd already started. I checked my pocket for my phone. In case he wouldn't come with me, I decided I would call the cops. He needed help, and I was going to make sure he got it no matter what. As I approached the gravesite, I saw him digging furiously. He'd already made it down a few feet. He looked up at me briefly and smiled. He was lit only by the lantern set next to the headstone, and the low, dim orange light gave him an almost sinister appearance. "I see you got my message." He looked horrible. His body was thin and emaciated. Dark circles were prominent under his eyes, and he was covered in filth from digging. "I did." It was all I could manage to say as I stood there staring at my friend, who looked like he was dying. "Good. I brought an extra shovel." He nodded towards the pile of dirt he'd made, where another shovel stood stuck in the ground. "Give me a hand here. We gotta get her out." He returned to work. I walked towards the grave with my hand outstretched, ready to appeal. I didn't know what to say, though. The sight was so unnerving and sad. He and I were friends. I was supposed to be the best man at his wedding. The words were stuck in my throat, and I felt more like I was just going to start crying. Alex looked up at me again, a confused look on his face. "Dude, are you just going to stand there?" He laughed a little and tossed out another shovelful of dirt. "Come on. Grab the shovel and help me out here." "Alex." I choked back the sadness I felt. and tried to keep myself composed to some degree. Alex, Karen is dead. He finally stopped digging. I watched as he slowly turned his head towards me. His face was somber and was so gaunt it almost seemed like his skin was hanging off his skull. I saw behind his eyes that his brain was attempting to apply reason, to see what I said as truth. Suddenly, he shook his head no like a spoiled child that refused to listen. You don't understand, Adrian. You just don't. He started digging furiously again, and his tone suddenly became indignant. I asked you here to help me with this. If you weren't going to do that, then just leave. I'm trying my best to help you, Alex. She talks to me, you know. He interrupted me before I could continue. I can hear her in my head at night. She tells me that she's down here. I know you think I'm crazy, but I promise you, it's real. The revelation stunned me. I knew Alex had been pretty unhinged since Karen's death, but I never thought it had gotten this bad. I stood watching him dig, unsure how to continue. It started with whispers. I thought they were dreams at first, waking dreams. He continued throwing shovelfuls of dirt onto the pile, never breaking his rhythm to look me in the eyes. Then I started hearing her all the time, Adrian. She's begging me to get her out. Alex. I paused myself, thinking for a second about how to proceed. Alex, I want to help you. Good. Grab a shovel. No, I mean, I want to help you fill in this hole. Then we can go somewhere and talk about what we should do next. He started laughing for the first time since I got there. He climbed out of the hole and stood face to face with me. I could see him gripping the shovel so tightly in his fist. While he'd been digging, I didn't notice the streaks of blood on the wooden shovel handle. I could see it dripping out from beneath his clenched fists as well. He's worked open wounds into his hands already. Alex, you're delusional. I know you think it's Karen, but it's not her, man. She's gone. It's your grief that's talking to you. I was saying hard truths, but kept my voice soft. We need to get you help. Adrian. He got right in my face as he spoke. Fuck you. Alex, I'm just trying to help. 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 You've said that word a lot since you got here. But the only fucking help I want is for you to pick up that shovel and dig. He turned his back on me and walked back towards the grave. I'll say it again. If you're not going to do that, then just leave. He hopped back down in the hole and went straight back to work. Each time he'd thrust the shovel down, he'd grunt, his teeth bared, and his face flushed red with anger. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I looked down at the keypad, knowing what I had to do next. If Alex wouldn't take my help, I'd have to impose it on him, whether he wanted it or not. What the fuck are you doing? He had apparently glanced my way and seen me holding the phone. Adrian, what are you doing? I'm calling the cops, man. This is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And maybe if they take you in, someone can get you what you need. I looked back down at my phone and tapped in 911. But before I could even press send, I saw Alex rushing towards me with the shovel raised to strike. There was a flash of pain, and then darkness. I woke up with a severe headache and could feel blood dried on my face. I went to reach up and touch it, but found my hands were tied behind my back. My feet had also been bound together, and I was laying on the grave next to where Alex was continuing to dig. He'd made a lot of progress while I was knocked out. He was now shoulder deep in the hole, and he was still working furiously. He was bare-chested now, and when I looked down, I noticed he'd torn his shirt up to make my bonds. I could see his ribs peeking through his skin as he dug. It looked as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. "Alex, what the fuck are you doing?" He stopped suddenly when he heard my voice. When he looked at me, his face had become even more skeletal, and his eyes more vacant. "Sorry, Adrian, but you were gonna call the cops. I'm glad you're awake now, though. For a second, I thought I'd killed you." He said the last part almost to himself as he went back to work. The lantern cast menacing shadows over the headstone as he tossed out each pile of dirt. "Alex, man, untie me. Right now. When I'm done. When you see that I'm right." He snorted once and let out a long, tired sigh before wiping his brow. "She's down there, man. Can you seriously not hear her?" I listened and heard nothing more than the wind rustling the autumn leaves. "There's nothing to hear." I struggled against my restraints. It seemed possible to slip free, but it might take some work. "Alex, you're losing it. What's down there is not what you think. It's Karen, but you don't want to see her like she is now. I'm telling you, man, stop this, and let's get out of here. Everything is gonna be fine, Adrian." I could see the manic smile on his face. "She says it'll be just like it was, that everything is gonna be fine." "Nobody is talking to you," I screamed. "Nobody." He grabbed another piece of his shirt that hadn't been used for restraints and balled it up. He jumped out of the hole and stuffed it in my mouth, much to my protest. "Stop. Just stop. It'll all be over soon, and I'll untie you. We're all leaving this cemetery together." He was still smiling as he clapped me on the shoulder before jumping back into the hole. I watched him dig deeper and deeper down, wrestling against my bonds the whole time. One of them started to feel looser around my hand, and I focused on that. Before I could slip free, though, I heard the clunk of the shovel hitting wood. Alex started digging even faster, clearing all the dirt off the casket. "Karen? Karen, baby, I'm here. I'm getting you out." Alex threw the shovel into the pile of dirt, and the top of his head disappeared down into the hole. My right hand started to slip free. In my head, I knew what would be next, how horrible it would be, no matter how it shook out. I screamed through my gag for Alex not to open it, to not look. But I knew he wouldn't listen to me, even if he understood me. I heard the casket creak and break as he pried it open. Then silence. Far too long of a silence. My hand was almost free, but even if I did get loose, I didn't know what to do. I knew my friend was probably in that hole, devastated, looking at the desiccated body of the woman he loved. But then suddenly, he laughed. "Baby, I can't believe it's you. I missed you so much." Then, to my shock, I heard a second voice. A woman's voice. It was Karen's voice. "I missed you too, Alex. I knew you'd come for me. I knew it." It was a weak voice, little more than a whisper. I stopped working against my bond, unable to reconcile with my brain what my ears had just heard. It was impossible. Laughter and tears came from within the hole for a few moments. Sounds of complete and utter joy. The sound of lovers reunited under impossible circumstances. Things turned sour very quickly, though, as the sounds of joy turned to screams of terror and pain. Alex suddenly started screaming and clawing to get out of the grave. I could see his hands peek over the side for a moment, then vanish back below like he'd been pulled back down. Karen's voice echoed throughout the night, somewhere behind Alex begging for help. "I missed you so much, my love." I went back to work on my restraints, my heart thudding a mile a minute, and the sense of urgency suddenly pushed much further. My ring was having trouble pulling through the cloth, and as I wrenched against it, I saw Alex suddenly appear over the top of the grave, clawing at the dirt to climb the rest of the way out. His face was torn open in a few places, horrible, bleeding gashes on his cheeks. One of his eyes was missing, but the other was staring right at me, begging for help. Just as quickly as he appeared, he was tugged back into the grave with a wild strength. In a panic, I was finally able to free my hand and immediately set about setting my feet free. The sounds of Alex's screams finally died inside the grave, and things went deathly quiet for a few moments. Once my feet were free, I stood up hastily and found myself torn between running and taking a couple steps closer to the grave so I could see inside of it. Part of it was concern for my friend, who may still be alive. Part of it was that horrible train wreck curiosity that knew he was dead and needed to confirm. Mostly, though, it was the fact that I wanted to know what exactly the fuck happened. But suddenly, a pale hand rose from the grave and clawed into the dirt. It was followed by another. Karen's voice rang out through the cemetery and rattled around my head. "Adrian? Is that you, Adrian? I've missed you. Come give me a hug." The sound of that haunting, broken version of Karen's voice put an end to my curiosity, and I ran. I turned on my heel and sprinted from the grave faster than I have ever run from anything in my life. The whole time I kept peering over my shoulder, expecting to see her hot on my heels in a torn burial dress soaked in blood. I made it to the wall and scrambled over it in half the time it had taken me the first time. I got to my car and drove away from there as fast as I could. I found myself still checking the rearview mirror, thinking she would be sitting in the back seat or floating behind the car like some kind of ethereal monster. Sometimes I still look behind me, expecting her to be there, saying she missed me, asking for a hug, and ready to finish what she started with Alex. I told my story to the cops, pretty much the whole thing. I left out some of the parts at the end. I simply told them that something attacked Alex while he was in the grave. Due to how mangled and chewed the body was, the coroner concluded that it was most likely a wild dog attack, and my short time as a suspect in the cops' eyes ended. Still, no one could explain why Alex's body was the only body found lying in Karen's grave, and it seemed like no one really wanted to try. We buried Alex roughly 4 months ago. He was my best friend, and it's torn me apart inside. I was there and couldn't help him. I couldn't do anything to stop what happened to him. But as much as that hurts, lately, it's something else that's really been bothering me. About a week ago, I heard him for the first time. In my head, like a soft whisper. It's only gotten louder over time, and I know it's just gonna keep getting louder till I act on it. I'm still alive in here, Adrian. Alex says to me at night, when the world is most quiet around me. I'm still alive. Please, come get me out.